The signal has been there for 19 days. I have shown this to 7 people.
Then we file one ourselves.
19 days. That was how long the signal had been sitting in the deep-range atmospheric monitoring log before Sael brought it to someone who did anything about it. She had not intended for that someone to be Rook Callahan. She had not intended anything, really. She had simply run out of people on the official list, and he was the last door in the corridor that still had a light on behind it. He was a freight coordinator. His office, if you could call it that, was a repurposed cockpit module bolted to the side of the loading infrastructure at Dock 9, with instrument panels that hadn't been updated since before Sael was born and a viewport that looked out over the grey rain-soaked sprawl of Port Halvern's industrial district. He was mid-40s, built like someone who had spent those decades doing physical work, with dark hair going grey at the temples and the particular quality of attention that some people developed when they had spent years solving problems that didn't come with instructions. She knocked on his door at the end of a shift she had been dreading. He opened it, looked at her and said, "You look like you've been having a week." 19 days, she said. He stepped back and let her in. Sael was Vethri, one of maybe 40 of her species currently working in Port Halvern, most of them in the monitoring and analysis sectors because Vethri perceptual range extended into frequency bands that human instruments couldn't catch without specialized equipment. She had been running atmospheric deep-range monitoring for Port Halvern's outer beacon array for 2 years, which was exactly long enough to know what normal looked like well enough to notice when it wasn't. The signal had appeared on day 1 of what she now privately thought of as the worst 3 weeks of her professional life. Quiet, low frequency, cycling in a pattern that didn't match weather systems, geological activity, or any of the 17 standard categories of atmospheric anomaly in the monitoring manual. It was consistent. It was growing very slowly in amplitude. And it was coming from a direction that, if you extended the trajectory backward through the data, had been moving toward Port Halvern for approximately 3 months. She had brought it to her direct supervisor, who had told her to check the calibration on her equipment. She had checked the calibration. The calibration was fine. She had brought this back to her supervisor, who had told her to run a secondary verification. She had run the secondary verification. She had brought this back. Her supervisor had told her she was reading interference from the new construction array on the east side of the port. She had pulled the construction array's emission profile and compared it to the signal. They didn't match. She had brought this to the Deputy Port Authority monitoring liaison, who had asked how long she'd been doing this work and whether she'd considered that new analysts sometimes over-indexed on anomalies. She had been doing this work for 2 years. She was not a new analyst. She did not say this. She had then gone to the IMO station representative, the environmental safety coordinator, the shipping authority liaison, and a senior analyst at the independent monitoring collective who had nodded very seriously and then done nothing. That was 7 people. 7 people across 19 days, and the signal was still there, still growing, and nobody had filed a report. She pushed the tablet across the surface toward Rook. "The signal has been there for 19 days, she said, hearing her own voice come out more tightly controlled than she'd intended. "I have shown this to 7 people. None of them filed a report." Rook looked at the waveform on the tablet. He didn't say anything immediately. He pulled the tablet closer, examined the data, scrolled back through the history log, looked at the amplitude progression curve. "This is growing," he said. "Yes. At this rate. 11 days, she said. "At current progression, it will be within measurable impact range in 11 days. He looked up from the tablet. "What happens then?" "I don't know exactly," she said honestly. "The signal class is outside documented categories. The closest analog in the literature is a pre-storm atmospheric precursor phenomenon recorded once in the Velhari system 40 years ago." He paused. The Velhari monitoring station did not file a formal report in time. He was quiet for a moment. What happened at Velhari? He asked. The station was evacuated, she said. Afterward. After significant structural damage and... She stopped. It was evacuated afterward. Rook put the tablet down on the console in front of him and looked out the viewport at the rain-gray city beyond. The cranes moved slowly in the wet air. The lights of the port reflected in puddles on the loading floor far below. Then we file one ourselves, he said. She looked at him. I have grade 5 Port Authority credentials, he said. Freight coordination and logistics. It's not monitoring authority, but a formal filing under those credentials goes to the port director's office automatically. It can't be redirected to a liaison. He turned to look at her. We put together a complete package. Your data, your analysis, your amplitude projections. I attach my credentials and file it as a formal safety concern. They have to respond in writing within 48 hours. You don't know if the signal is what I think it is, she said. No, he agreed. But you do. And you've been right about everything you've shown me so far, which is more than I can say for the 7 people who didn't file a report. He picked up the tablet again. Walk me through it. All of it. Until I understand every piece. She walked him through it. Took 4 hours. He asked questions she hadn't expected. Not technical questions, practical ones. If this is what you think it is, what does the port need to do first? What's the minimum warning time for a managed response? What does a full evacuation of the dock district look like in terms of logistics? Questions that turned her data from analysis into action plan, which she realized was exactly what a formal filing needed to be. They filed at 2 in the morning. The port director's office responded at 6. Not a dismissal, a request for an emergency briefing, which led to an independent technical review, which led, on the 8th day after filing, to a formal precautionary alert being issued for the Port Halvern dock district. On the 11th day the signal peaked.